In this video we're going to be looking at policies that try and achieve the goal of strong and sustainable economic growth. And basically the hint of all these policies is they're expansionary. They're all things that are going to generally increase the size of the deficit and try and get us to spend more money, particularly in the short term. So expansionary budgets are generally seen as the budgets will stimulate economic growth because the government is injecting net funds into the economy. Whenever you're talking about an expansionary budget, it's all about injections outweighing leakages. So the government is, giving consumers access to more money by cutting taxes. They may be increasing G1 and G2 payments. They may be increasing transfer payments, which will again increase consumption spending. But it's basically policies that are going to boost aggregate demand. And when they boost aggregate demand, they will boost the derived demand for labour, which will create employment and create growth throughout the economy. So most policies you can link to strong and sustainable growth. You can also link to employment. But there will be certain policies that I would prefer you to link to growth and others too that are directly related to employment. But we're looking at expansionary policies that try to boost injections relative to leakages that are generally pushing us into bigger deficits. In the long term, if we want to boost economic growth, we have to be focusing on long-term policies that are going to boost the supply side potential of our economy. So when we're talking about the sustainable element of economic growth, we want to be looking at things that are going to boost aggregate supply conditions, the things that are going to boost our productive capacity, and basically allow us to achieve more sustainable long-term growth without inflation. So when we're looking at long-term things that are going to boost our sustainable growth, we're looking at things like investment in schools, investing in health so more people can stay in the workforce, anything that's going to boost participation rates, so that may even be increasing the pension age, anything that's going to improve infrastructure, could be skilled migration, but basically things that are going to allow us to produce more, so in terms of greater levels of output without causing inflationary pressures, so boosting the supply side of our economy. So here's some examples of things that will be used to boost economic growth. Increased transfer payments, so any money that's received in welfare or pensions to families, any bonus stimulus payments, so if we're giving cash handouts to people, another example of something that's going to boost economic growth. Personal and business tax cuts, again, these often lead to increased investment spending in the short term, so they can lead to inflationary pressures, but they're designed to boost aggregate demand. Reduction in company tax rates, again, they get to keep more of their money or their profits, so they're more likely to invest, and that's a big thing as part of this year's budget. Any increased G1 or G2 spending, so G2 meaning spending on infrastructure, where G1 is spending on for public servants' wages and defence and things like that. Accelerated depreciation allowances, so again making it cheaper for businesses to buy assets because they get to claim back some of that in tax, will encourage them to invest, and will not only grow aggregate demand in the short term, but should boost our productive capacity in the long term because we invest in machinery that is more productive. And again, another one is assistance to industry. So basically, if the government's giving money to specific industries, whether that be grants to help smaller businesses to access export markets, so we may give them money so they make it easier for us to export, which again will boost aggregate demand. These depreciation allowances will often boost investment spending or spending in research and development. All of these things are ways that we can get the country growing by boosting aggregate demand. And some of them will boost aggregate supply in the long term as well. Policies from the 2015-2016 budget, we won't talk about these a lot, but if you do get asked for something that's from the last couple of years, you can mention 2015-2016 policy. So one policy was the reduction in the company tax rate to 28.5% last year. Again, that's allowing businesses to keep more of their profits, so it encourages them to invest. That's the kind of language you need to use. That will boost aggregate demand and promote economic growth, because firms will get to keep more of their profits, they will invest, that'll create jobs, create employment going forward. Policies to get mothers back into work, they cut double dipping on maternity leave, which we'll talk about a little bit more in class, and free trade agreements with China to try and promote our exports. It's basically what the small jobs and business package was last year. It was just for businesses earning less than $2 million per year. It gave them a tax cut of 1.5%. So in addition to this, all small businesses will get a tax deduction for any assets they buy up to $20,000. So essentially, if you're investing in new machinery and equipment, you get a tax deduction on that, which allows you to claim around 30% of it back. 2007-2008, I know this is sort of going back a little bit, but that's when the government was delivering expansionary surpluses. So because the economy was growing so fast, we were able to generate surpluses despite the fact that a lot of the discretionary measures within the budget were quite expansionary because we were collecting so much tax naturally. 2014-2015 was the opposite. The economy was growing so poorly that even though the budget was quite contractionary and there were a lot of contractionary discretionary measures, because the cyclical part of the budget was going so poorly, we still remained in a deficit. So it looks like our budget was expansionary when it was really contractionary. We'll talk about policies from this year's budget in class.